Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jason, and this is my IO-390 Teardown series. If you're just tuning in for the first time, this engine was involved in a blade separation event, which means it lost half the propeller, which means we get to tear down to see if anything bad happened before we put it back into service. We removed all the cylinders, we got the oil sump off, we got the accessory housing off. Next thing we have to do is cut this thing in half, split open the case, take out all the internal parts. All right, so now that we're getting into splitting the case, there's a few things I want to do first to prepare for that. One of the things I want to do is turn this thing onto its side. Also, these oil return lines, I'm going to take those out. I need to put some blocks under here, and I don't need to damage them, and I don't need them in there anymore. Obviously, there's going to be some case bolts that go all the way around. There's going to be 6 through bolts or studs. There's some hidden safety wire on the back where there's a hidden nut on a stud, and then there's some safety wire on the bottom looking up as if you were looking up inside the oil sump. So I got to deal with that. It'll be easier on its side. I got to prep for that. Let's take these off. So the size on these is 5/8. I'm going to go with a 1/2 inch drive. The next things to get out of the way is this Vernotherm. Wire 7/8 wrench. Oh, where's the? So we got the spring. And we got the ball. So looking in the back of the engine, this is one of the gotchas that some people overlook. There's a castle nut with some safety wire on there. I need to work on getting that apart before the case will split. Got the right tool so I can get that one nut off behind the cam gear. 9/16 cylinder base wrench. It fits in just like that. Seems like I can turn it just enough to break it loose, but I can't really go much farther past that. It binds up on the side and I can't remove it, so I have to tighten it up just to get the tool off. Okay, wow, that took a long time just to get that nut just to move enough to where I can actually get the wrench in there and start to spin the thing off to where it's loose. Now I can get it with my finger. Man, that was crazy. Crazy capsule nut. Who put that in there? All right, so I was able to get the lower through stud out. That's how it should look. It should pull right through like that. Let me show you what I did. Method that I've come up with, and because I don't have a slide hammer here, is just to use hardware. So I'm going to slide a washer over there. I'm going to put spacer, and actually got some more washers. And I've just got this random 1/2x20 nut that fits on there. I'm going to tighten it down. I can just feel it. It's just pulling through as I crank down on it. So as I've run the nut down, I'm gonna go ahead and loosen it here. Add another spacer. Pop right out. Beautiful. Okay, so I got the 2 case through bolts free. There's 2 more on the back of the engine. Initially I thought there was 6, but there's only 4. The front 2, which connect to cylinder 1 on the right side of the engine, kind of free float, so to speak. So they can come out. The other 2, these are anchored in to the back of the case on the right side, meaning they're threaded in. They're not going to come out. I'll be able to separate the case and lift this half over those 2 studs. And I also need to take the seal off the front of the crankshaft. Let's do that now. To get the seal off the nose around the crankshaft, you don't want to scratch the crankshaft, obviously. A good tool is a cotter pin extractor like this. Can jam it into the seal. seals out. Right now it's sitting on 2 pieces of wood blocks that are 4x4s, which have enough room between them so that the connecting rods aren't hitting the bench. The strap is here just because I needed to strap it all together so that when I turned it, things didn't go flying. So that's all that is. All right, cool. Now that the crank seal is loose, I can start thinking about removing all the hardware around the edge of the case. One of the spots that's kind of tricky is underneath the engine, and there's 3 nuts and bolts with safety wire on. So I'm gonna cut that and remove those. I got a rag also underneath, so I can move this thing pretty easily on my workbench, which has an acrylic top on it. Most of the hardware around the case is gonna be 7/16. There's a couple nuts at the front of the case, which are 9/16. I've got just a standard socket wrench with a couple wrenches. One of them's ratcheting. I should get most of the job done here. These are the 2 9/16. One of them goes through and one of them doesn't. So the one on the top's a stud, the one on the bottom is a through bolt. Let's see if we can get that to move. There we go. So this is looking at the one of the pads for the alternator mounting bracket. As you can see, it's a little chewed up. When this thing had the propeller loss, it shook so violently that it ripped the alternator off, which actually went into the airbox and smashed that thing completely. You can see the bolts broke off, are in the holes. This thing's going to Divco, and that's one of the things I'm going to have them look at. I'm expecting the rest of the case to be pretty good. I would say this is pretty minor. If anything, they might want to weld that up and put helicoils or something in there, but otherwise I'm not terribly concerned about it. Pretty easy fix. So at this point I'm pretty much done with the bottom. I need to get to the top. I can go ahead and remove the idler gear shafts, which are safety wired on. These are the hydraulic plungers. The tappets come out from the inside. Then there were sockets on top of these, which came out earlier. I don't know if I took a picture of that or not, but so that about does it. Next thing I gotta do is split the case. All right, a little bit of an issue here. Ran into a discrepancy. First I was saying there's 6 studs or through studs that go through the entire case. Then I was on the phone, tech support, maybe it was miscommunication. They said no, there's only 4 of the outer studs. That didn't make sense because I was pretty sure this middle one went through. Well, anyways, I was trying to split the case and it wouldn't go. I got it to budge a little bit on the back. Front wasn't going. I started looking at it again and I just double checked the parts manual, and sure enough, these 2 front and 2 middle are through studs. The 1/2 by 20, 10.5 inch through studs. So I got that one out the same way that I got the 2 front ones out. I don't know if you can see it, but what I did is I put a real smooth washer on there. Stack up some spacers. Another washer, just a random 1/2-20 jam nut. And I did put a couple bolts back in the top and bottom just to make sure it's stuck together real good. This one ended up putting a couple marks on the case. Let me show you. I'm not happy about that. I'm sure that's gonna be able to get fixed, Divco, but it'll come at a price. hopefully not too bad. I think part of the reason that happened was the washer I had on there was turned the wrong way. Normally I use the face, but it had the back side of the washer. And if you know washers, there's always one side that's a little smoother, and unfortunately I didn't catch it and it spun in place. And also I didn't have the case tightened at the top and the bottom. So hopefully that's not an expensive mistake. But I'm pretty upset right now by it. I'll get through it. Much better. There it is. Zero damage to that hole. So I'm just gonna need that one cleaned up. This thing should come apart pretty easily now. So what I've done here is I've taken a piece of Romex, I've stripped it, so I've just got the individual pieces of copper wire, and I fed one up inside the case, around the camshaft, and back out. And then I've wrapped it around these studs here. I'm gonna do the same thing here, so when I split the case, the camshaft isn't gonna fall down, and the crankshaft should stay in the lower bearings. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Getting to this point was relatively easy as far as the case split here. When I had it in the other direction, I just took a wooden dowel and I tapped a couple of times on the opposite side of the case with a dead blow. Like this, I had this going through here. Imagine it's horizontal. Just made a couple taps, it started to loosen up, so I stopped right there. Flipped it on its side. I'm just on a couple of 4x4 blocks. Took my plastic wedge and started to kind of feed it in, and it's moving pretty good. So the thing I need to be aware of, be careful of, is the back two studs need to come out pretty evenly. So what I want to do, get this part off evenly. Crankshaft will stay in its bearings. The camshaft is tied to the upper half. So it seems like it's hanging up right here on this stud right above the camshaft. There's no nut on it right now, so I've removed the hardware. It just seems like it's, I can feel this thing just wants to lift off. All right, nice soft piece of plastic wedged. Did the trick right there. Now I'm gonna do the same thing all the way around. All right, open heart surgery, step number 112. Remove the case half and put it on the workbench. I was having a problem freeing it up, and I think I know what it was. My rubber bands that were wrapped around the through stud or the dowel were getting sucked in as I was lifting the case half up, and it was binding up right there. So I think that's solved. I got rid of the rubber bands and I just wrapped the cranks with rags and rubber bands so they can float and they won't hit anything or do any damage. Hoping this is it. Ha 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 ha. Much easier.